Welcome to the wonderfully chaotic universe of hip-hop, where family loyalty is supposed to be sacred. Yet inside the Harris household, that loyalty has somehow turned into a full-blown public showdown. Just when it seemed the tension between T.I. and his son, King Harris, couldn't possibly get messier, a third player casually tossed a flaming match straight into the gasoline. And of course, that master of trolling himself, 50 Cent. But this drama isn't just another petty social media caption anymore. Now we're talking bloodlines, betrayal, and a young man who feels pushed straight to the edge. The internet completely lost its mind when 50 Cent, a man who never ignores a chance to stir chaos, publicly questioned whether King was actually connected by DNA to Tip. It was a brutal jab aimed right at the core of King's identity. Instead of backing down quietly, King Harris snapped back with a level of fire nobody saw coming. And no, he didn't stop with the online trolls. King turned his focus much closer to home, unleashing a sharp attack that landed right at the doorstep of his own mother, Tiny Harris. This wasn't just some emotional defense either. It sounded more like a loud declaration of independence from Atlanta's so-called royal hip-hop family. He's clearly done being the punchline, done with the spoiled rich kid narrative, and apparently done waiting for his parents to say something. By accusing Tiny Harris of not protecting him and firing back at the DNA rumors, King has basically declared war on his own legacy. He's no longer acting like a kid chasing approval. Now he's demanding respect, even if it means setting the entire family tree on fire to prove his point. And the fallout from that DNA rumor? It's opened a massive Pandora's box filled with family tension, ugly secrets, and public embarrassment. So the real question everyone's whispering about is this: is King Harris actually being pushed away by his own family? Or did 50 Cent carefully light the fuse to slowly blow up T.I.'s household from the inside? As King fires back with his own counterattacks, the line between real life and social media theater is getting harder to see. Today we're unpacking the timeline behind this messy feud, the serious accusations King aimed directly at Tiny Harris, and why this DNA drama may have finally pushed the Harris family past the point of no return. To understand why King Harris is currently going full scorched earth against his own relatives, you have to look at the intense pressure cooker he's been living inside for years. Being raised as the son of the King of the South, T.I., and the iconic Tiny Harris from Xscape meant King was never destined for anything close to a normal life. While most of his siblings seemed to handle fame with some level of calm and control, King has always been the outlier. He's the rebellious one, constantly trying to prove he's street-made, even while growing up behind gates and surrounded by security guards. That identity battle is exactly what 50 Cent tapped into, which explains why the explosion we're watching now feels so intense. The spark for this newest round of chaos began with what looked like a small moment online, until 50 Cent, the undefeated champion of internet trolling, decided to crank the volume all the way up. After all, trolling powerful people has practically become one of his hobbies. But when 50 Cent aimed his attention at the Harris family, he didn't settle for a harmless joke. He went straight for the jugular by publicly questioning whether King was even T.I.'s biological son. By pointing out supposed physical differences and personality clashes, 50 Cent didn't just throw shade at a teenager. He also took a swipe at the foundation of T.I. and Tiny Harris's marriage and King's right to carry the Harris name. For King, this wasn't just another viral meme floating around the internet. To him, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. Imagine trying your whole life to escape your father's giant shadow, only for a hip-hop heavyweight like 50 Cent to tell the world you don't even belong in that shadow at all. The DNA accusation was a calculated humiliation tactic. And unfortunately, it landed exactly as intended. But the deeper story here isn't just that 50 Cent decided to run his mouth again. The real twist in this drama isn't just that 50 Cent made the joke. It's that King Harris believes his own parents didn't do nearly enough to shut it down. And that's exactly where everything shifted. Instead of seeing 50 Cent as the main enemy, King suddenly started looking much closer to home, right at his own dinner table. What followed wasn't some polished PR response crafted by a team of handlers. It was raw, emotional, and completely unfiltered, and it went straight for the heart of his own family. King jumped onto social media not only to reject the DNA rumors, but also to accuse his father, T.I., of caring more about protecting his public reputation than protecting his son's mental health. In King's eyes, the logic is simple. If someone questions your child's legitimacy, you don't stay quiet just to keep the industry comfortable. You don't brush it off with a laugh. You stand up and shut it down. But because King felt that moment of defense never came, he decided to fire back himself. And his attack didn't spare anyone, including his mother, Tiny Harris. That's where things really shocked fans. Tiny Harris has always been viewed as the emotional glue holding the Harris family together, the protective mother figure ready to defend her children at all costs. But according to King's outburst, that image doesn't match what he believes happens behind closed doors. King accused Tiny Harris of quietly allowing the narrative that he's the family's problem child to continue. He suggested that behind the scenes, the support simply isn't there, and that his mother may care more about protecting the Harris brand and empire than actually listening to his frustrations. In short, he accused her of failing at the most basic responsibility of a parent, protection. And from King's perspective, this wasn't some random tantrum from a spoiled kid. If you listen closely to his words, there's a deep layer of resentment about how he feels he was raised. King's anger seems to come from feeling less like a son and more like a character inside a reality show storyline. When he talks about exposing the truth, he's hinting at revealing what really happens when the cameras are off. In his mind, he's threatening to pull back the curtain on the entire Hustle family image and show the world that the so-called royal reputation might just be a carefully maintained illusion. The DNA comment from 50 Cent acted like a magnifying glass, amplifying insecurities King had already been carrying for years. When 50 Cent floated the idea that King didn't even resemble T.I., the internet jumped on it instantly. Comment sections exploded with endless jokes about who the real father might be. For someone like King, who has spent his whole life trying to earn his father's respect through music and his own persona, hearing people claim he might not even share the same bloodline was the breaking point. In his mind, T.I. should have been the first person to step forward and shut the whole thing down with the same King of the South energy he shows toward rivals. Instead, T.I. approached the situation with a calmer, more philosophical attitude, which King interpreted as indifference. To him, it felt like his father was quietly saying, "You're on your own with this one." So King reacted the only way he knew how. He got loud. He got aggressive. And he started listing every way he believes he's been let down. The DNA rumor became more than just a rumor. It became a gateway for King to air out years of frustration. He brought up how he felt portrayed on their reality shows, how family conflicts were handled publicly, and how he believes he has often been painted as the family's black sheep to make everyone else appear more polished. That's why this early stage of the conflict matters so much. It shows the turning point where the problem stopped being 50 Cent and became something much deeper, King Harris versus the Harris family itself. And this wasn't limited to a few angry tweets. King launched multiple live sessions and posts where the emotion was impossible to hide. He wasn't just yelling into a phone screen. It felt more like he was yelling at the people living in the same house. His message was clear. If his family wouldn't publicly claim him and defend him, then maybe he didn't want to be tied to that legacy at all. The psychological weight behind this situation is hard to ignore. King Harris is still a young artist trying to establish himself, yet every step he takes happens under the enormous shadow of T.I. When 50 Cent injected the DNA doubt into the public conversation, it threatened the one thing King believed was unquestionable, his heritage. And when he looked toward Tiny Harris for that protective maternal response and felt it never came, the attack became his only way of defending himself. King ultimately decided that if his family wouldn't stand beside him, he would stand against them, even if doing so reinforced the rebellious reputation he has spent years fighting. And as this story continues unfolding, it's becoming clear that this isn't the kind of conflict that disappears with a simple apology or a deleted post. The accusations King has made toward Tiny Harris and T.I. are heavy, the kind of words that leave lasting scars. He has accused his parents of behaving more like industry figures than family members. And for T.I., who has always presented himself as a man guided by principles and wisdom, that accusation may be one of the hardest to accept. As the drama unfolds, everything seems to be moving toward a possible breakdown of the family structure the public once believed was unshakable. And that original DNA joke? It might have been nothing more than the key that unlocked years of resentment waiting behind the door. The moment King Harris directed his anger toward Tiny Harris, the entire conflict shifted from ordinary celebrity gossip into something far more painful, a public family tragedy. For years, Tiny Harris was seen as the peacemaker, the person who stepped in whenever T.I.'s discipline felt too strict or when the internet piled criticism onto King. But in King's eyes, that protection may have been more appearance than reality. When 50 Cent's DNA rumors started spreading, King didn't just want comfort behind closed doors. He wanted his mother standing publicly on the front lines, shutting down the trolls questioning his legitimacy. And when that response didn't come with the intensity he expected, King launched an attack that left fans completely stunned. King's main charge against Tiny Harris centered on what he called performative parenting. During several heated social media rants, he claimed Tiny Harris cared more about protecting the family brand and her reality television image than actually protecting his mental health. According to King, she allowed the public to see him as the rebellious black sheep because, frankly, it made for better television. That's a heavy accusation for any mother, especially one who has spent decades in the spotlight trying to keep her family together. But from King's perspective, the pain behind those words was real. In his eyes, Tiny Harris refusing to aggressively shut down 50 Cent's DNA rumor indirectly fueled the idea that he might not truly belong. What followed wasn't just a single angry post. It became a deliberate dismantling of his mother's carefully built public image. King began describing moments where he felt overlooked, insisting the love shown on camera didn't always match the reality happening behind closed doors. He even used words like fake and industry-driven to describe the support he believed he was receiving. To King, the idea that Tiny Harris could stay silent while someone as powerful as 50 Cent questioned his bloodline felt like the ultimate betrayal. He didn't interpret her silence as maturity or restraint. Instead, he saw it as disloyalty. In his mind, if his own mother wouldn't defend his identity, then he would tear down the identity she helped construct for him. This moment in the story reveals a clear generational divide in how conflicts are handled. Tiny Harris, a seasoned veteran of the entertainment world, likely believed responding to 50 Cent, a man famous for chasing attention, would only make the situation worse. Her strategy may have been simple: ignore the joke and let it fade away. But King Harris belongs to the live-stream generation. To him, silence looks like guilt, weakness, or surrender. When Tiny Harris didn't publicly fight back, King felt abandoned, like he had been left outside while the internet wolves tore him apart. His attack on her was essentially his way of saying that if he was going down publicly, then the family's spotless reputation would fall with him. The DNA rumor from 50 Cent became the ultimate trigger because it struck a nerve King had already been struggling with for years. Within the Harris household, he has often been the one making headlines for public arguments, legal encounters, and viral confrontations. He became the sibling the internet loved criticizing. When 50 Cent joked that King might not even be T.I.'s son, it suddenly gave people an explanation for why King seemed different from the rest of the family. It handed trolls an easy narrative. Suddenly the joke started. Maybe that's why he acts out. Maybe he's not really a Harris at all. And when King felt Tiny Harris wasn't doing enough to crush that narrative immediately, the anger inside him exploded. During his public outbursts, King began hinting at painful moments from his upbringing. He suggested there were times when Tiny Harris may have prioritized her career or her relationship with T.I. over his emotional needs. He painted a picture of himself as someone who felt more like a prop in a larger entertainment story than a real member of a family. The intensity of his accusations suggested that this drama wasn't only about 50 Cent. It sounded like years of bottled resentment finally boiling over. King even implied that Tiny Harris might have been afraid of industry backlash, while he believed he was the only one brave enough to say what he felt was the truth. As a result, the internal family conflict quickly became the center of attention, overshadowing 50 Cent's original post. As the argument escalated, King started distancing himself from the Tiny Harris and T.I. family brand altogether. He emphasized his own independence, claiming he didn't need their wealth or their protection. The irony, of course, was that he was using the very platform built by that family to launch these attacks. The public was essentially watching a son attempt to separate himself from his parents in real time. The DNA rumor became the weapon, but Tiny Harris became the target because, in King's mind, a mother should be the final line of defense. Once he felt that line had collapsed, he believed he had nothing left to lose. Every moment Tiny Harris stayed quiet only seemed to fuel his anger further. In his mind, every hour without a fierce public defense meant she was siding with the people attacking him. King began criticizing her parenting choices, her priorities, and her loyalty to the Harris name. He even suggested he was the only authentic person in what he described as a house full of actors. This phase of the feud showed the world that the family's famous hustle and family image was under serious strain. The DNA rumor had planted seeds of doubt, and King was watering them with his own frustration and emotion. His attack on Tiny Harris also carried a strategic element. By targeting the woman T.I. loves most, King forced his father to respond. He was essentially stepping into the ring and daring T.I. to choose between supporting his wife or defending his son. It was messy, emotional, and painfully public. Beneath the rebellion, it looked like a desperate cry for attention and validation. King's words toward Tiny Harris were sharp and unforgiving. He questioned her character, her priorities, and even her role as a mother, leaving little room for quiet reconciliation. He wanted the world to understand that the DNA debate didn't matter anymore because, in his view, the emotional foundation of the family had already cracked. By the end of this stage of the conflict, people were no longer talking about 50 Cent's joke. The conversation had shifted completely toward the Harris family feud itself. King had successfully redirected the spotlight, but the price was enormous. He had pushed his mother away and placed his father in an impossible position. The DNA rumor had been the bait, and King had taken it completely, using the anger it created to strike at the very center of his home. Tiny Harris, once viewed as the untouchable matriarch holding everything together, was suddenly being criticized publicly by her own son. And the damage looked almost impossible to repair. The story now painted King Harris as a young man who felt entirely alone. In his mind, if 50 Cent could question his bloodline and his parents didn't loudly defend it, then maybe he truly had no place in the family or the industry. The attack on Tiny Harris became the ultimate moment of burning bridges. It was King declaring that he no longer wanted the protection of the Harris legacy if it came at the cost of his dignity. This conflict was no longer just about a DNA rumor. It had become a painful test of family loyalty and a mother's love in the age of social media. And the tension only grew more intense when the King of the South himself, T.I., finally stepped forward to respond to his son's explosive accusations. For T.I., this wasn't just another online argument. It was something far deeper than a simple social media dispute. For T.I., this wasn't just another messy internet argument blowing up on social media. It was a direct hit to his authority, his pride as a man, and his position as the patriarch of the Harris family. The moment King aimed his anger toward Tiny Harris, he crossed a line T.I. has spent his entire career fiercely protecting. T.I., often known as Tip, has always carried himself like a street philosopher, someone who believes words and wisdom can control chaos. But when his own son started publicly attacking the woman he loves, the situation stopped being about music, fame, or reputation. Suddenly, it felt like a fight for the survival of his family. T.I. responded the only way he knows how, carefully and strategically. Instead of exploding with insults, he delivered what many called a masterclass in controlled frustration. He leaned into his trademark vocabulary and calm logic, attempting to explain King's outbursts as nothing more than growing pains from a young man still figuring himself out. But King Harris wasn't interested in a lecture. The DNA rumor started by 50 Cent had already done its damage. To King, it acted like a truth serum, exposing everything he had been feeling for years. What he wanted wasn't a speech about maturity. He wanted his father to publicly ride for him the way fans expect a hustle gang leader to defend his own. That disconnect created a dramatic collision between two very different energies. On one side was T.I., calm, calculated, and composed. On the other side was King, raw, emotional, and explosive. The internet couldn't look away as the father and son turned into two rival kings battling for control of the narrative. The most intense moment in this entire saga came when T.I. and King finally shared the same space. Whether it happened during a live stream or a public appearance, something shifted. The carefully managed image cracked, and the tension between them became impossible to hide. T.I. tried reminding King of the sacrifices he made to give his son the life he now lives. But King fired back immediately. In his eyes, the money and fame weren't blessings. They were golden handcuffs that prevented him from being his authentic self. He even accused T.I. of behaving more like a CEO managing a brand than a father raising a son. And this is exactly where 50 Cent's DNA rumor became such a powerful weapon. By questioning King's bloodline, 50 Cent had unknowingly handed him the ultimate escape hatch. King essentially used that doubt as a shield, suggesting that if T.I. wasn't going to treat him like a son, then maybe he wasn't one at all. As the argument intensified, 50 Cent's role in the chaos became more obvious. After dropping the original DNA comment, he barely needed to say another word. He simply leaned back and watched the Harris family unravel in public. The goal was never really to prove King wasn't T.I.'s son. The real objective seemed much simpler, to show the world that T.I. couldn't even keep control of his own household. Ironically, by publicly attacking both Tiny Harris and T.I., King was unknowingly doing exactly what 50 Cent had hoped for. The image of Atlanta's royal hip-hop family began to look less like a united empire and more like a house built on tension, expectations, and carefully managed appearances. Eventually, King's rebellion reached its most shocking point. He began hinting that he wanted to drop the Harris name entirely. For T.I., a man who spent decades building the grand hustle empire and turning the Harris name into a brand, that statement cut deeper than any insult. From King's perspective, however, the Harris name had become more of a burden than a blessing. It came with endless expectations but, in his view, very little emotional support. He even accused Tiny Harris and T.I. of turning his rebellious behavior into entertainment value, suggesting that his struggles boosted their ratings while he dealt with the mental consequences of becoming the internet's favorite villain. As the dust slowly began to settle, the spotlight returned once again to Tiny Harris. In the middle of the chaos, she attempted to play the peacemaker, posting vague and emotional messages online about family, forgiveness, and healing. But by that point, the damage had already been done. But for King Harris, those peace signals from Tiny Harris felt like they arrived far too late to matter. He quickly fired back again, suggesting her sudden calls for calm looked less like genuine reconciliation and more like damage control for the family brand. The level of mistrust King showed toward his own mother runs deep, and it's the kind of fracture that could take years of healing to repair. In his mind, Tiny Harris chose her husband and the family empire over protecting her son's dignity. The DNA rumor may have sparked the chaos, but King's attack on Tiny Harris appears rooted in years of feeling misunderstood and unheard. And that's where this viral feud leaves the Harris family, somewhere very dark. Celebrity conflicts usually end with a smiling group photo or a carefully written joint statement. But this situation feels different. King Harris may have fired back at every person who ever doubted him, yet in doing so, he has also pushed himself further away from the very family that built his world. He's no longer just the rebellious kid from the hustle household. Now he's a young man who has publicly challenged his parents and even questioned the bloodline tying them together. To the rest of the internet, 50 Cent's DNA comment may have sounded like just another trolling joke. But to King Harris, it felt like confirmation of a fear he had carried for years, that he never truly fit into the world created by T.I. and Tiny Harris. And when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the fallout is brutal for both parents. T.I.'s reputation as a wise mentor now faces questions about whether he can even reach his own son. Meanwhile, Tiny Harris's long-standing image as the nurturing heart of the family has been shaken by accusations of neglect and performative love. King Harris's explosion wasn't simply a moment of anger. It was a full rebellion against the hustle family legacy. He wanted to prove he could stand on his own name, even if doing so meant standing alone. And when you analyze the outcome of this entire drama, it almost feels like 50 Cent won the round without lifting another finger. With one viral post, he managed to turn a son against his parents and parents against their son. But the real tragedy isn't the trolling itself. It's the possibility that King Harris feels so invisible within his own family that attacking them publicly became the only way he believed he could be heard. As the story continues unfolding, one thing is clear. the Harris family will never look the same again. The DNA connection might still exist, but the trust between them appears completely shattered. King Harris ended this chapter with one message. He's standing on business. According to him, he's moving forward with his music and his life, without the shadow of T.I. or what he calls the fake protection of Tiny Harris. Whether he can truly survive in the industry without the Harris machine behind him remains a huge question. But for now, his statement is loud and unmistakable. He fired back. He launched his attack. And in the process, he left the entire kingdom in chaos. The DNA rumor might have been the spark, but King Harris was the one who allowed the fire to spread. And now the real question hanging in the air is this: can a family ever fully recover after such a public breakdown? T.I. has always said family is everything, but King's actions suggest that respect means everything. Until those two beliefs somehow meet in the middle, the Harris family conflict is far from finished. 50 Cent may have lit the first match, but King Harris is still holding the torch, and it doesn't look like he's ready to put the flames out anytime soon. If you found this breakdown of the Harris family fallout and King Harris's explosive response to 50 Cent interesting, hit that like button to help us keep bringing you the biggest stories and most intense celebrity drama. Now we want to hear from you. Did King Harris cross the line by attacking Tiny Harris, or was he justified in defending his identity after those DNA rumors spread online? Drop your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation.